Hello, and welcome to the live reading of my upcoming novel, The Rift, a Bolingbrook Babbler story. My name is William Brinkman, and I write the blog, The Bolingbrook Babbler. I see we've got 5 people, so, yeah. Well, anyway, the last time I did a reading, only one person showed up, so this is already an improvement. I'll wait a little bit before we start. Basically, the Bolingbrook Babbler is a blog I started, actually before blogging. I started in 1998. At the time, I was living in Bolingbrook, Illinois, and I was wondering what it would be like if Bolingbrook had its own tabloid similar to the Weekly World News, or what tabloids were like back then. And I hand-coded a webpage and wrote up a silly story. Then about a month later, I figured that was fun. I should just one once a month. And that's how, excuse me. And then I became a monthly feature and featured in Bolingbrook newspaper. They did an article about it, and viewership took off. And took a break from it for a while, then resumed in 2007 and gained a much larger following, and here I am today at Free Thought Blogs. Now, basically, and want to chat, feel free. Basically, I wrote a novel before, but it was on the web, and I got rid of it a long time ago. So this will be the first one I've actually submitted for paid publication. Before that, I've been writing the Babbler consistently since 2017, and studying terms in Bolingbrook. Before that, I did some freelance writing for White Wolf. I was part of their Demon the Fallen line. And it was interesting because everyone on the writing team there were mostly born-again Christians, and I was like atheists. So just seemed like whenever the game designer said, hey, I need someone to write a fiction about the really tormented demons, and I'd be like, sure, me. Okay. I think a couple more minutes. I've been doing the Bab really consistently since 2007. I'm a former resident of Bolingbrook, but I did live in Bolingbrook in the early 90s and the early 2000s. And bit of trivia, I lived in Mayor Roger Clare's subdivision, though he didn't really notice me until after I moved away. Yeah. So, as many of you may know, I've been critical of the mayor. He's done some good things for Bolingbrook, but I think in some ways he took advantage of his position, and now he's mayor emeritus, and the village board can't seem to stop honoring him. And in some ways it should, but it seems a bit overboard at times. But time to move forward. Okay. For the novel, it's called The Rift, a Bolingbrook Babbler story. Back in 2011, 2012, I was thinking about writing a novel based on the setting of the Bolingbrook Babbler. Now, as some of you may be aware, the Babbler is a fictional tabloid that the blog's based on that's supposedly been around since 1965 when Bolingbrook was founded. The first issue was delivered to everyone's doorsteps the moment the incorporation papers were signed. And it pretty much argues Bolingbrook has the world's largest urban UFO base, cloud UFO base, and other tabloid-like things. And Mayor Roger Clare was the most important mayor in the galaxy. And now the current Mayor Mary's, I guess you could say she's acting mayor, who's now the most important mayor in the galaxy right now. We'll see. And that's another story. Okay, so as I was saying, I was thinking about doing a novel, and it was going to be silly, more the anarchistic style of the Babbler. But also at the time, I was heavily involved in the skeptical and atheist movements. And there started to be a rift forming between the feminists and social justice faction and the very strong conservative, libertarian, anti-feminist faction, which later became known as the Deep Rifts. And things kind of exploded. Basically, an incident, became known as Elevator Gate. I don't really have time to go over that one. But then the main thing is just how nasty it really got it. And I thought it would blow over. And the initial drafts of the novel, it was the whole Elevator Gate thing was just like a passing joke. But just how nasty it was and how divisive it was. And the people, the leadership that should have stood up against the hate and sexism and the harassment was like very wishy-washy and being more concerned about standing up to feminism than standing up to sexism and bigotry, my opinion. And so I realized that the focus of the novel needed to change, and I wanted to deal with that. Granted, it was my intention to release the novel much sooner, but having some problems, and I discussed it. I ended up going with an editor, Alex Gabriel, and we decided we needed to really dig into it and make some changes. And I agreed because I'd rather release. If I'm going to ask people to buy a novel, I want it to be something worth reading. I don't want it to be a money grab. So, on that note, I think we can get started. Okay, basically, the mayor, just to start out with, just to be clear, the mayor in this novel is called Mayor Robert Clark. Take it from there. And the main character is Tom Larsen. He is up-and-coming blogger among skeptical and atheist circles. He feels that while he's successful, he's still mad because he feels that a popular podcaster and blogger, Jamie Kyle, ruined his budding journalism career. And then 3 or 4 years later, he finds out that Jamie's going to be in Bolingbrook at the Bolingbrook Golf Club because organization Humanist Heart is going to be holding their Congress there. And then Jimmy just can't, Tom can't resist the opportunity to confront them and wow them with his superior reasoning and skepticism and put them to shame. But the only way he can get into the conference is to be sponsored by a media group or a quote, a recognized Bolingbrook publication. And the only publication that will consider Tom is the Bolingbrook Babbler, which is the complete opposite of what he stands for. So in this scene, Tom is going up to the office for his interview because he submitted a tryout piece for them. And he's really not too happy about going to the Babbler, but it's his only choice. Tom stood at the front door. Painted on the glass were the words, Bolingbrook's first and only true tabloid since 1965. Tom sighed and walked in. The lobby, if you could call it that, was a small area with 2 padded benches, one on either side of the front door. A front counter and 2 side counters separated the reception area from the newsroom. To his far left, he saw a door and thought he could make out the words Chris Olsen, publisher. Probably the only real office in this building. The rest of the room was filled with cubicles. A woman was sitting at an open-air desk wearing a gray textured t-shirt and blue jeans. She looked familiar, but he couldn't remember why. The woman looked up from her computer. "Can I help you?" "I have a meeting with Sarah," Tom replied. "You must be Tom." She stood up and walked towards the counter. "I'm Wendy Onifray. Pleased to meet you." Tom shook Wendy's hand. "Sarah got called into a meeting with our publisher. Something about a job applicant. You can wait back here with me." And he lifted up the hinge part of the counter and opened the small door. Tom walked into the news area, and Wendy motioned for him to sit at a chair next to her desk. "Are you applying for the reporter position?" Tom shook his head. "Just submitting an article. If it goes well, maybe she'll let me cover the Congress at the Bolingbrook Golf Club." Wendy smiled and nodded. "Could be an interesting story. The golf club doesn't exactly scream social justice. Plus, Robert doesn't strike me as one of them. Of course, it would be the safest place to hold a Congress. It is the secondary command center for Bolingbrook." "Oh, I think I remember reading about that in an old Babbler article." "Like I said, it'll be interesting to see what happens at the Congress. It will be the safest place in Illinois, next to a cloud UFO base, of course." Tom started to nod, then stopped himself. Safely plotting to take over the skeptical movement, I guess." And he shook her head. "Actually, that's not the point of this meeting. From what I've read, they've been divided between the form-only faction and the nonprofit faction. So this is really a congress about the future of the group. Do they stick with being an internet-only space for progressive skeptics, or do they become a progressive version of the Hoppenstein Society? They also need to decide if they want to work with other progressive atheists or not." Tom let himself nod. "There'll be other groups there as observers, so it might be a lively event. Yeah, hopefully I'll get a chance to report on it." Wendy raised her finger. "Say, didn't you used to write a blog?" "I still do. It's called Skeptical Hurricane." "Oh," you looked uncomfortable. "I remember when it was Skeptical Butterfly." "You used to be a skeptic?" "I still am." "You are?" Tom stumbled. "I didn't expect to find a skeptic here. Actually, this is the best place for a skeptic to be. I've learned more here than I ever did in the skeptical movement." "You left the movement?" "It left me. Look, my advice." The back door opened and a man and woman walked in. The woman had wavy blonde hair and seemed close to Tom's age. The man looked like he was closely related to Wendy. They were holding bags and cups from Portillo's. "Lunchtime," said the man. "Thanks, Dale," said Wendy. "You're getting hungry." "Where's Sarah?" "Meeting with Chris. Wasn't too pleased about a job applicant, I think." The woman looked at Tom and tilted her head. Then she quickly walked over to him. She turned to Wendy. "Who's your friend?" "This is Tom Larsen. Tom, this is Jenna Olsen, sales representative, granddaughter of our publisher, and one of the members of our Council of Psychics. Though I prefer to call myself a sensitive." That is, Tom closed his eyes and thought the rest of his answer. When he opened his eyes, he saw Jenna frowning. "First of all, that was rude. I am not a telepath. I have precognition. And my psychic advice for you is to remember that there are many intersections in the Pathway Village." Tom knew that Bolingbrook's nickname was the Pathway Village, but that sentence made no sense to him. Wendy cleared her throat as Jenna walked away. Tom turned toward Wendy. "As I was saying, if you're going to work with us, you have to be open to more possibilities. It doesn't mean having a totally open mind. But being a denialist doesn't help either," said the man who looked like Wendy. "Tom, this is my brother Dale. We used to be identical." Tom wasn't sure what Dale meant. Tom continued, "You write the Babbler's Skeptical of Skeptics column, right? And you write Skeptical Hurricane." Tom blinked. "Yes." I liked it better when it was Skeptical Butterfly. Dale, said Wendy, be nice. Okay, so why did you change the block? Tom looked carefully around the newsroom. Well, I never found any convincing evidence of psychics or cryptids. And so I moved on to other topics and decided to change the name. Now I'm interested in debunking more important things, like feminism. Dale looked at Wendy. Just like I warned you, once you start down the path of skepticism, you end up embracing assholism. Dale, Wendy interrupted. Why don't you do your sister a favor and get back to your column? I need to finish talking to Tom, and besides, that grumpy Minnesota professor is waiting for your reply. Dale glanced at Tom, then back at Wendy. I'll send her a tweet when it's published. He walked into his cubicle. Tom turned back towards Wendy. Doesn't he believe that the Hobbenside Society created an anti-psychic cat that can kill psychics? Yes, and we have joint custody of anti-psychic Kitty. How did you arrange that? That is a very long story, came the woman's voice. Tom turned. He saw an African-American woman who had short curly hair and was wearing a white blouse with black slacks. She seemed to be in her mid-30s, which my staff doesn't have time to tell because we have an issue to finish. Tom stood up. I know who you are. Sarah Langston. We have a lot to talk about. She offered her hand and shook Tom's hand firmly when he followed, then motioned for him to follow. They walked into her cubicle. The divider walls were bare, but behind the desk was a small bookshelf. On top of it were pictures she guessed were of her husband and daughter. 2 books stood out to Tom. A worn-out guide to haunted places in Chicago, and one titled Blood in the Wind, The Secret History of Chicagoland's Vampire Kingdoms and Free Territories. Sarah motioned towards the chair in front of her desk. Tom sat and placed his copy of the article on her desk. For the first time since college, an editor was about to review his writing. Sarah sat down in her chair, clicked her wireless mouse, and turned her attention to her screen. Tom removed a pin from his shirt pocket and sat it next to the article. You aren't making my job easy, said Sarah. Oh, I was just talking to Chris about his concerns about you. Then we overheard your argument with Dale. Tom felt a pit in his stomach. I'm sorry. Many skeptics have encountered him online, and he's... Anyway, I'm sorry. I won't argue in your office again. Good. So, let's start with your story. I'm sure you need some minor... You made it up. Tom froze. Sarah glared. Say something, Tom thought. And, asked Tom, you wrote a piece of fiction. A very bad piece of fiction. We don't print fiction here. Horror washed over Tom. Look at your story, continued Sarah. It's about the gray-type aliens. There's no such thing as grays. Then you brought Bigfoot into the story. Bolingbrook doesn't have a Bigfoot population. Even if there were one, aliens don't carry Bigfoot corpses away. They turn to dust. I also know that you didn't interview any aliens. We are not a literary magazine, and we don't print fiction. Come on, Tom protested. This is too much. Everyone in Bolingbrook knows your stories aren't real. Sarah shook her head, Maybe. If I'd spent as many years among skeptics as you, I wouldn't think twice about submitting this. Maybe I'd feel like I was being smart. Tom blinked again. You really believe this? Listen to me. I didn't always write about the paranormal. I used to work for a suburban newspaper. I was well liked. Looking back, I was probably too nice. I didn't ask the hard questions because I wanted access to the important people. Oh, I broke stories first, but I really didn't look under the surface. 5 years ago, I wouldn't have believed anything in the Babbler. That changed when Robert Clark made several visits to the desert sun. I was told he was in a planning session for a convention and he was going to be a speaker. I decided to write an article about the convention. After I did 5 interviews, including one with a Village of Bolingbrook spokesperson, I was ready to write it. Tom nodded. Then, when I pulled out my phone for my notes, I noticed a voice memo I didn't remember recording. Sarah paused. It was the voice of a man who I didn't remember, dictating how I would write the article. I realized that I was following those instructions like a mind-controlled puppet. Tom wasn't sure what to say. I had to figure out what happened. And my editor just kept assigning me new stories. When I kept digging, the publisher gave me an ultimatum. My husband said I should stop working on it, but I couldn't quit. I wasn't content to get access to exclusive stories anymore. I wanted the truth. How did it end? I found my way to the Babbler. With their help, I uncovered a summit between the mayor of Chicago and the New World Order. The summit was about a proposed UFO base in Chicago. Chris was so impressed with my work, he hired me. I see. So, I am very fortunate that I was able to find a place like the Babbler. Our content may seem like a joke to you, but we make sure our stories are well researched before publishing them. Do you believe me? I don't know. That's a start. I apologize for writing a piece of fiction. I didn't know. I'd like to explain how I can write our story, a real story for the Babbler. I'm listening. Okay, let's talk about my YouTube videos. Let's not, Sarah replied. Tom swallowed. Sarah continued. Let's talk about your blog. Back when it was Skeptical Butterfly, you did a very good job. You were more thorough than most skeptics, even if you sided with the party line. Then once your pass at Jamie Kyle backfired, you? Tom looked closer at Sarah's face. His eyes widened. You were at the table that night. I was. When I saw Jamie's video, it was easy to figure out who she was talking about. You told my editor about it. Of course. You were a sexual harassment suit waiting to happen. I had to say something. Tom got up and started to walk away. I can get you into the golf club. Tom stopped walking and turned around. Sarah continued. I also looked at the articles you wrote in college. You were an excellent investigative journalist. That article on corruption and UIC student government, very good work. Thank you, Tom replied hesitantly. Not every reporter can say they forced a politician to leave the country. You know where he is now? I think he runs a casino for the Russian mob. That's my understanding. Your early work tells me you have the investigative abilities we value here. In fact, I might have an opportunity for you. Tom didn't know what to say. But I have a question. Your blog says you're a man going your own way. So why not keep going? You have a successful blog and podcast. You have thousands of followers. You're a leader in the skeptical movement, and even if you don't think of yourself as one. So why do you have to go to this meeting? I won't send you there if you're just going to harass Jamie. His heart sped up again. I'm not. Good. Sit down. Tom sat. Tom, what do you know about Weird here? Okay, and then things get interesting. So this will be out next year. I'm still in the process of writing and editing. So this is close to the final version. It'll be, I think I have to finish the second to last chapter, write the last chapter, and then Alex and I are gonna go over the whole thing one more time, and I've already made a few changes. So that's it. Next year, available at least Amazon. I might have a publisher covering it, offering to publish it, or I might do it by myself. That's where it stands. Any questions? Okay, if not, this was part of the Free Thought Blog's Carnival of Curiosity. It's a fundraiser. Part of it goes towards paying off the legal debts from a slap lawsuit. There's more details in the link below in the description. And let's see, there's other events. Let's see. Tonight at 6 o'clock Central Time, there's the Science Fiction and Social Justice panel. And P.Z. Myers will be moderating that. And so consider this the warm-up to that panel. And at 8 p.m. Central Time, it's the quiz. I will be on that one. It's Abby will be the host, and I'm going to have to brush up on QI on the quiz show QI. Then tomorrow, let's see. Oh, and then after that will be the sophisticated literature reading. I won't be there, but you can guess what that is. Sunday will be a panel on scientism at 1 p.m. Central Time. And then I will be on again, excuse me, 3 p.m. Central for the panel of an expert discussion. Dale Onifray, the character that was mentioned earlier, I'll be performing that character as he dives into academia and TED Talks, or as we refer to them in Bolingbrook, BED Talks, Bolingbrook's Enlightened Discussion. And then memorial for Free Thought Blog's co-founder Ed Braden will follow that. So that's it. Thank you for your time. Stream will be online, and I'll be posting more when the Rift is closer to publication date. Thank you.